Good morning from Haifa. What a beautiful city. What a beautiful country. Okay, we are up to Lamed Hey Amud Beis, and we just saw the Mishnah where the Mishnah told us they're a mayor when there is a case of a suffix. So in other words, you have, for example, Truma that was used for your Eruv Tchumen, and then you find out that it became Tameh, but you don't know when it became Tameh. So Rav Yossi says it is Tar. We assume it being Hashmashos, the critical time, it was not yet Tameh. And when it comes to Rameir disagrees. Rameir says, no, we treat it as Tameh. So again, what the argument is a case of a suffix, a case of a doubt, and Rameir is saying that in a case of a doubt, you find this Truma, you know, but now it's Tameh, you know before Shabbos it was Tahar, and it has to be Tar, has to be pure so that the Kohen is able to eat it. When Shabbos begins, we don't know what the status was being Hashmashos. So Rameir says it's Tameh. Ask the Gemara, so Rameir, does Rameir actually hold that a case of a doubt is judged more strictly, right? Because what is this case? This is a case of a doubt, and Rameir is judging, is ruling strictly. That's not what's taught in the Mishnah. Tameh shiar litbal, a Tameh person who went down to immerse in a mikvah, suffik tafal, suffik lo tafal. And now there's a doubt as to whether he immersed properly, right? Sometimes a person go to a mikvah, but they didn't immerse properly. So there's a doubt. There's a doubt whether the person immersed properly. Vafilu taval. And even if we know for a fact that a person immersed, suffik taval bar b'amsa, suffik lo taval bar b'amsa, the person goes into mikvah. We're not sure if the mikvah had the requisite measurements, the amount of water. V'chein shnei mikvahs. Similarly, you have two mikvahs. V'achas yesh bar b'amsa. One of them has the required amount of water. V'achas ein bar b'amsa, and the other one doesn't have the required amount of water. V'taval b'achas behan, and the guy knows that he or she knows that they went into one of them, but they don't know which one they went into. Sveko Tameh. In all these cases of doubts, the person maintains their status of Tumah. In other words, the reason they're going to the mikvah is because they are Tameh, and now they have a doubt whether they went to the proper mikvah, did they go to the mikvah, etc., etc. We say in the case of doubts, they maintain their status of being Tameh, and they are Tameh. Okay, b'medvar morim, when is it said? B'tumah chamura, in cases of biblical tumah, biblical impurity. B'tumah kala, when it comes to less severe tumah, i.e. rabbinic tumah. Kigon, for example, and these cases should be familiar for those of you who learn Masechah Shabbos from way back in the beginning. Kigon she'achal ochlan tmein, or a person ate food that was tameh. So that doesn't actually biblically make you tameh. Rabbinically, that makes you tameh. V'shasa mashkin tmein, or a person drinks liquids which were tameh, which again rabbinically makes you tameh. V'ba rosha v'ruba mayim she'uven, or a person immerses their head and most of their body in drawn water, which rabbinically makes you tameh. Or 3 lugan of drawn water fell in a person's head and most of the body, again rabbinically tameh. So the person is in a status of rabbinically tameh. They then go to the mikvah. Suffik taval, suffik lo taval, and again they're not sure if they actually went to the mikvah. If taval, and if they did immerse, suffik taval bar b'amsa, suffik lo taval bar b'amsa, did they actually go into a proper mikvah or not? V'chein shnei mikvos. Similarly, per case where there's two mikvahs, v'achas yesh behem bar b'amsa, one of them has the proper amount of water, v'achas behem bar b'amsa, one of them doesn't. V'taval b'achas behem, the person immersed in one of them, and they don't taval, they don't know which one they immersed in. Sveko tahar. In all these cases, sveko tahar. In those cases, in the rabbinic cases, the person is pure. In the rabbinic cases, okay. Rav Yossi Matame. In the rabbinic cases, Rav Yossi Matame. We're gonna come back to Rav Yossi's opinion right now, but the point is that Rameir in that Mishnah that we just quoted, in a case of a biblical case, then he is strict. In a case of a rabbinic case, he's lenient. What's Tchumen? Eruv Tchumen presumably is rabbinic, as most opinions hold that Eruv Tchumen is rabbinic, and therefore the question is, why in our Mishnah is Rameir stringent when it comes to a suffix, a doubt? And he says we're going to be stringent and say that the Eruv was not a good Eruv, that it became Tameh. And in the case of mikvah, he is going to be lenient. In the case of mikvah that is rabbinic, he's going to be lenient. He's only strict in the case of a biblical tumah. So Gemara answers, because Rameir tchumen dorez, and I know the Gemara says, yeah, not a problem. There is an opinion that holds that tchumen are biblical, and therefore there's no contradiction whatsoever. In that Mishnah, he himself distinguished when it's a biblical case, he's going to be stringent. In a rabbinic case, he's going to be lenient. He holds eruv tchumen is doraisa, and therefore now you have a doubt in the case of a biblical case, i.e. tchumen, according to Rameir, and therefore, we understand why he's being strict and saying that we just have to assume that it was Tameh before Shabbos began. Ask the Gemara, is that so? So Rameir Tchumen D'Oraisa, does he really hold that Tchumen are biblical? That's not, we learned in the Mishnah. So here we're talking about how to measure the distance of the 2,000 amos that we have. Okay, so it's very easy when it's all flatland, if you're in Iowa. But let's say you have mountains, you have hills, you're in Yerushalayim or something like that. But that's not. It was talking in the Mishnah, Yachalav Leo. So what do you do? So the first thing you do is something called spanning. So not spamming, spanning with an N. So let's say you have a mountain or a valley. So you hold a rope. Let's say you have a valley. So one person, you hold a rope on one side of the mountain or the mound, and another person holds the rope on the other side of the mound, and then you measure that way. Now, obviously, that's a much smaller measurement because really you should be going and coming out on the other side, which already counts many more over amos. But we don't have to do that. We just go across. Okay, and the Gemara says, "Bizo amar v'yudistai." And if you're not able to even do that, to span it, then Bizo Amar Dostai Bar Yanai Mishum Rameir, Shemati, they quote Rameir who said, I heard Shemakadrin Baharim. You pierce the mountains. In other words, you don't even have to do this holding it over, but let's say you have a big mountain, a big mound. So you just kind of go through it. So you kind of go almost like around it in the sense that you pierce the mountain, which obviously loses space. Instead of going up and around or on top, you just go pretend you're just going right through it, okay? And if you hold that Tchumen are biblical, Mimikadrin would be implied the lenient piercing method. It doesn't make any sense. The Rav Nachman said, in the name of Rav Ravua, we do not use this measurement called piercing, which obviously, again, ignores all the ups and the downs. You're just kind of going through things, just going all the way across. Lo bar mikla, it's not regarding the cities of refuge, which has its own measuring. Not with regards to the case of Eglurufa, another biblical case, because they're biblical. So you see, in biblical cases, everyone agrees you do not do this measurement of piercing. And yet, Rameir, we just quoted as saying that you do the measurement of piercing. We're going to get into more of this piercing measurement story in a little while. But the point is that you see, we just established Rameir holds that Tchumen Daraisa. And yet, when it comes to measuring, he's seemingly using measurings which are only done, measurement styles which are only done for rabbinic laws. Lokasha, Hadideh, Hadarav. The Gemara says no question. In our Mishnah, really his real view is Eruvin are Daraisa. And in our Mishnah, when he was strict about the error which he wasn't sure about, which we're not sure about when to become, contaminated, when to become tameh. He says it is going to be tameh because it's deraisa and tzvika l'chumra, and in its case, you have to go stringent. Hadarabe, in the case of the piercing, there he's quoting from his teacher. It's not his actual view. And how do we know that? If you listen closely to the words, what does it say? Bezo amrav dasai bar yanai mishum Rav Meir. So when we quote Rav Meir in regards to the piercing, which we see him being lenient, but how do you start a statement? Shamati shemakadrin b'harim. I heard, meaning he heard from someone else. It's not his view. He's saying, I heard from others, this is their view, but it's not his view, right? So he himself holds Eruvin or Daraisa, and therefore in a case of doubt, we go L'chomra. His teachers held it was rabbinic, which by the way is the predominant view, and therefore, according to his teachers, there's going to be certain leniencies. Okay, then Gemara asks now another question about Rameir. V'rami Daraisa Rameir. Let's ask a contradiction from two biblical laws. So we just established Rameir holds that Eruvin are Daraisa. However, it's not. We learned in the Mishnah, Naga be'echad belayla. So a person is sleeping in a room, and in the middle of the night, it's a small room, they touch the person that they're next to, okay, they bump into the person they're next to, and then they wake up in the morning, a little gruesome, the person turns out to be dead. And, when he touches the person, he bumps into a person, okay, and then, the next morning he finds his roommate passed away, okay? Now, we don't know when did the person pass away, because I know in the middle of the night I touched that person, but I don't know when that person died. If I touched the person before he died, I'm tameh, I'm first degree tuma. If I touched him after he died, then I'm not going to have the same status of tuma. So Rameir Matahar. Rameir says, you're tahar at that point. Okay, there's a doubt, right? There's a doubt. Rameir says, presumably you touched him while he was still alive. The Chum disagrees. The sage called tumas kishas that all the status of a tuma are going to be decided according to the time you find the person, and when you find the time the question, and the question arose only when you found him dead, and there we therefore assume that he was dead when you touched him as well. The bottom line is for a mayor, there's a contradiction. Mayor over here is saying, in a case of doubt, we assume we go with his original status, which is pure. We go lakula. Leniently, Rav Yirmiyah. So we say Mishnah Sheretz called Bein Hashmashos. He says no. Our Mishnah, says Rav Yirmiyah, is a case where there was a creeping creature, something which is kind of going to cause the truma to become tameh, that was on the truma during the entire twilight period, meaning the entire time that we need the item to be pure, the item was being touched by a tameh sheretz. So Gemara says, Yihachi, if that's the case of Mishnah. Rameir is saying, in that case you're tameh. Baha lema Rav Yossi spake eruv kasher. So we know there's machlokas in our Mishnah. Rameir said it's tameh. Of course it's tameh. There's a sheretz. There's an impure animal, rodents touching it and making it tameh. But okay, and in that case, Rav Yossi is going to say tar because it's machlokas in our Mishnah. One opinion is saying tameh, one opinion is saying tar. It makes sense that Rav Yossi would say tar in a case where you know that there's a sheretz, there's a rodent touching it throughout the entire Mishmashos. So Gemara says, Rabbi Rav Yossi, we're talking about a case with two sets of witnesses. Achas omeres b'ma'odium nitma. One of them says that the truma became tameh while it was still day. And one says that it happened only after it was dark. Okay, so the issue is not well, the issue is what happened, but it's based on two conflicting sets of witnesses. One set of witness said, oh yeah, we saw rodents go on it, but it had happened while it was still day, before the Eruv kicks in, and therefore the Eruv is not a valid Eruv. Second set of witnesses come and they say, oh yeah, we saw the Sheretz touch it, but we know it didn't happen while it's still day. It happened after nightfall. So what you have over here is a doubt, but it's a doubt created by two witnesses. And so Rameir, who is Matame, so really Rameir in a vacuum would say, if I'm in the case of doubt, we're going to go Lakula, we're going to go leniently, just like he would say in the case of the person touching the dead corpse, where he goes leniently. The reason, and we go on the original status quo, which is that the person was tahar. The person, meaning I was tahar when I went to sleep. I may have touched this person. I don't know when I touched the person. So we go with the status quo, the original status quo, which said I was tahar, and I'm going to be tummy at the last possible moment. So I didn't, when I touched the person, the guy, we have to assume he was still alive. In the case of our Mishnah, we're not talking about a chazaka anymore. It's a chazaka that was, yes, there is a chazaka that the food was tahar when the person put it out. The problem is over here, there are two witnesses conflicting about when it became tameh, and a chazaka in a situation where a status quo is not going to be a factor when you're talking about witnesses or testifying. In other words, Rameir holds that since there are witnesses who say that the food became tameh before it became dark while it was still day, therefore the chazaka is not there. It's true, there's two witnesses which conflict. It doesn't matter. Those two witnesses negates the chazaka, and therefore Rameir says you're going to be tameh. Obviously, Rav Yossi holds in that case that the two witnesses completely knock each other out, and therefore you have the chazaka still standing. But we'll come back to Rav Yossi. I hope you followed that. Okay, Rava gives a different answer. Rava Amar Hasan Trei Chazak Lekula V'Chachad Chazak Lekula. Rav Yossi says, Rava says a different answer. Rava says that, let's think through these cases. In our case of Eruvin, you have a food item which was tahar, and you don't know when it was touched by something tameh. Okay, one thing has a status quo, the tahar food, pure food, and you don't know when it became tameh. You know it became tameh, you don't know when. So you hold one thing, one chazaka, one status quo. Whereas when it comes to the person sleeping at night, so I, the living person, I was tahar, so I have a chazaka status quo that I'm alive. The roommate was alive and went to sleep. So he also has a status quo that he's alive. So there's two chazakas going in the right direction, and therefore in that case, Rameir is going to be lenient because there's two chazakas going in the right direction, saying that everyone's pure, everyone's alive, etc., etc. In the case of Eruv, there's only one chazaka going in the right direction, and therefore Rameir is going to be more stringent. Have a wonderful day.